So I'm going to be discussing some concepts about Jacques Lacan and his psychoanalysis. Gonna sort of try to get over some of his main concepts here today in this video and in other videos. Pretty much because I want to kind of get main things out of the way. Not out of the way, I guess it's a better way of looking at it, but I want to get some main things discussed and documented on this channel. That way I can just start reading, basically getting into the other side of psychoanalysis, which is one of his seminar books, and also sort of dig even deeper to the four fundamental concepts of psychoanalysis. The other side of psychoanalysis is in the other room. I was to show you that, but that I got thanks to the other side of psychoanalysis and a couple of the books that are about Lacan. I got from Chad African. He was a philosophy YouTuber who is a very good friend of mine. He lives in Colorado at the moment, and he's just a really good friend of mine, and he is sort of getting out of some of this critical theory type stuff. He's kind of more into the early kind of philosophy and the kinds of philosophy that are, I guess, not that are just basic. They're not basic, but he's just trying to stay within stuff that's regular in the history of philosophy and getting out of critical theory type stuff. So he sent me a huge package of books, and a lot of them are French novels and stuff like that, and a lot of them are critical theory type things. I'm trying to get into more into some of those things. This one, however, I purchased on my own accord, and I've read a good amount of it, and I want to sort of dig into a good few of this, bigger concepts, just to get some groundwork down of understanding on this channel. That way I can sort of get into more detailed things about Lacan, because my content about Lacan is very minimal on this channel, so I want to sort of change that, I guess. So in this video I want to discuss what is called register theory, or it's just talking about the Lacanian Lacanian subject. That's kind of what we're kind of getting around here. And his subject, the subject isn't really a subject, and I'll sort of explain that a little more. His subject is a decentered one. It's not like Freud, it's not like Heidegger so much. It's not. He has his own thing, and Jacques has a book called The Ticklish Subject, which is actually right behind this iPad, where he does kind of expound on some of those concepts and gets more into the idea of a decentered subject. But he's often called the French Freud, and he sort of explores Freud. In this book, he does explore Freud a lot. He thinks about Freud. And I want to do a video just talking about general concepts of Freud too, because I think I did that once, but I don't know if a lot of people got it. So I think I want to redo that. The video I did a long time ago about general concepts of Freud did not get a lot of views, but that was like 2 years ago, so I'm going to try and redo it. So what is register theory? Lacan is basically the French Freud, because he has a lot of concepts that are from Freud that he sort of makes into his own. He puts his own influence on it. However, the subject, Freud is known for the unconscious. Basically, he's known for the unconscious. Lacan has a very similar idea of the unconscious and the repressed, and the unconscious of Freud and of Lacan is pretty much the fact that our subject, and Lacan towards his in the 50s and beyond, he sort of gets into this. He takes the structuralism of Claude Lévi-Strauss the structuralism that he has sort of takes that and thinks about it in terms of the subject and about psychoanalysis, and he sort of structuralizes psychology and psychoanalysis and the subject itself. And the register theory is like that. It's a structured thing, and the three registers, they overlap and they intersect. However, and they kind of interlace between each other, and however they're very, very different, and they sort of are kind of like Freud's the superego, the ego, and the id. As we know, the ego is the self, respectively. It's just the self, the subject, the stream of consciousness. However, either the id or the superego. One of the other two is this driving thing to do things that would please you, while the other one is sort of a moral structure that you have inside you that is just a part of you, which would sort of, both of the ego and the superego and the id both kind of go through the ego, and the ego has to choose one of those bad things that the id is giving he wants to do, and what moral restrictions from the superego does he want to install into what he does. So there are three dimensions of cyclical subjectivity of Lacan. All registers are dependent on one another, and it's kind of like the Borromean knot. It's three circles. It's like a Venn diagram almost. It's like this, that little three-circled sort of thing. One of them is the imagination, or the imaginative. One is the symbolic, and the other is the real. And we'll sort of get into this video. First, we'll go with the imaginary. It's restricted spheres of consciousness and self-awareness. So, a lot of philosophers, Heidegger, a lot of the phenomenological philosophers, and the hermeneutic philosophers, and the structuralist philosophers, including even Saussure a little bit, Freud, a lot of people, people before the post-structuralist period, will look at the self, at the subject as they will think of it in a Cartesian way. And what do I mean by that? And looking at the self as in a kind of Cartesian way, Descartes in his argument, ego cogito sum, I think therefore I am. That's mean the fact that he's kind of doubting everything in that first meditations on first philosophy, and he's doubting many things that he previously had, and he wants to give a foundation for his new philosophy or his new system of beliefs. One of those things, there's a good few, but one of those things in which he says this as indubitable and undoubtable is the fact that I exist, and he infers that because of the fact that he doubts and he thinks. And from that, philosophers following the modern period, and including in the modern period, will look at the subject as a part which we can expound upon and jump off of. They use it as a jumping off point into inferring and arguing other things, which means that they are using the subject as a centered thing and thinking about it in a way in which is indubitable and incorrigible, and thinking about it in a way which means that you can't really, it means what you can argue things and how it's a basic belief. This is not that. Lacan is getting away from that. So the imaginary does have to do with imagination. It's a restricted spheres of consciousness and self-awareness, and it's about who or what imagines one to be. It's who you are thinking of yourself as, imagining yourself to be. Imaginary perspectives of others, so that you have a perspective of yourself and who you are, and you have a perspective of who others are. And there's about this, the whole thing of the gaze, which I will do a video about at some point, is the gaze. Sartre has his the gaze, and so does Lacan. And there's the ego, and then there's the mirror stage, and I will get into the mirror stage in a different video, most likely. But the mirror stage is sort of the thing where you are looking at yourself in the mirror. You are trying to figure yourself out and who you are. But I'll get more into that in a different video. But that's what the imaginary register is about, and this is a part of Lacan's structuralism of his period of writing in speaking in the 1950s. So we have sensory perceptual phenomena steered by sociolinguistic structures and dynamics. So you have perceptual phenomena of yourself and others and about other things steered by sociolinguistic structures and dynamics. So we have imaginary means fictional, simulated, and virtual, and it's necessary illusions and real abstractions. It's illusions, yet they're necessary. They're important things that you have to have, and then that you definitely, every subject definitely does have. And Lacanian subjectivity is a very intricate, unwieldy thing to get a hold of here, and I guess that's what I'm going to try and do here. But so the imaginary is a necessary illusions and real abstractions, without confusing any register with one another. So it's unreal, but have effect of fictional human relations. So it's real, but it's sort of kind of is at the same time. So the imaginary is, in a way, it is a illusion. It's a delusional sort of thing about many things in this world that you see that are perceptual phenomena about yourself and others and about the world in general. However, it's part of who you are to see that, and they are necessary things to have these illusions. They are important. So now on to the symbolic, and that's another structuralist thing that he got from Levi-Strauss. This has to do with language as well, and there is what is called a symbolic order, which is comes from the objective spirit of Hegel. It's intersubjective and it is trans-subjective contexts. This is where we get a decentered subject, and it's kind of talking about how the subject is integrated into the idea of the linguistic or language itself, and how there is a symbolic order, and how language links people together, links subjects together, and intersubjective and trans-subjective contexts, and how the idea of how the whole phenomenon of language can, and this symbolic order can link subjects together in a sort of a decentered way. Decentered subject. It's for singular subjectivity is collective symbolic order, and how there's sort of there is a singular subjectivity, but not so much at the same time. It's a collective and any one possible singular subjectivity, much as it can be, is one collective symbolic order in itself. And this is where we have the idea of the unconscious, which comes from Freud. It is engaged in symbolic action of speech. So when you speak and you're having an outward action, that's, I guess, where this unconscious kind of comes out a little bit. And this is where we have the two terms used by Lacan in French, langage and langue, which one is, langage is syntax and semantics, which are the inner workings of language, and langue is tongue, like a certain way of speaking. All right, and the structure of this whole thing is symbolic, and the symbolic has to do with language. And I'm sorry if I'm not explaining things very well. This is sort of a difficult thing to get into, and I'm going to try in future videos, after I get these ground concepts down, to sort of do more in-depth videos about Lacan and his works here at some point. After I get these down, and sort of, because Lacan is honestly not my strong suit. I haven't read as much Lacan as I have, say, Derrida or Deleuze. But I still have read a good amount of Lacan, and I feel like I can talk about it at least. Now to the third register of the real, which is a realm which contains conscious apprehension. And it's beyond apprehension, and it's beyond perception. So the unconscious is primary concern of psychoanalysis, and how also the real and the structuralism is a big part of this one too. It's the real and the unconscious is structured like a language. That's where he kind of brings this whole structuralist conception in, because he's looking at the unconscious and the subject itself in a structural way, like a language is, like how a language has syntax, which is syntax being rules for how we speak, syntax being rules of talking, ways that we can correct ways of talking, where semantics is where we put in things that actually mean something. So like I said, we have the imaginary, which sort of is a structural thing, and it contains the way that we see things, and the symbolic, which sort of brings this structural thing into play, and it sort of has this symbolic order where it kind of links all the subjects, and it gives us a decentered subject, and we have the real, which kind of does it does go beyond apprehension, does go beyond perception, and sort of gives us it in a way makes Lacan a realist, because he does see that there is a real objective thing. There's an objective thing going on, and that is kind of like how he says that the symbolic register is like Hegel's objective spirit. So there is objectivity. Mainly the real is what does this. And all these three registers sort of interlace and interlock and sort of overlap. They don't overlap. That's a bad word to use. But they do dovetail, and they do interlock. So those are the three registers. I'm sorry I went almost 20 minutes in this video, and I just wanted to be cursory here. I wanted to be very cursory in this video, but I kind of went longer than I wanted. But if you think I've messed this up, or sort of didn't do I didn't explain things well, or I butchered something, please tell me below. I do appreciate all of your comments. I do appreciate whenever you point something out to me, or you do say something about, or you want to contribute to this discussion. I do appreciate that.